Elena had always been the perfect wife. The kind who woke up early to make his coffee just the way he liked it. The kind who remembered his meetings, his favorite meals, and even the way he sighed when he was stressed. She had built her life around him, loving him without conditions, without doubt. Or maybe without reason. Because love had blinded her. The late nights at the office. The sudden business trips. The scent of a perfume she didn't wear lingering on his shirts. She had brushed it all aside, convincing herself that she was just overthinking things. But reality had a way of shattering even the most carefully constructed lies. And tonight, it shattered completely. Elena stood frozen at the bedroom doorway, her heart a quiet, steady beat in her chest. The woman in her bed, their bed, gasped, scrambling for the sheets. Daniel, her husband, turned around, his expression shifting from shock to something closer to irritation. Elena, I can explain. She raised a hand, cutting him off. There was no anger on her face, no heartbreak. Only something cold. Unreadable. Let's make a deal, she said smoothly. You keep her, and I take everything else. Daniel blinked, then let out a scoff, as if she had just said something ridiculous. Elena, be serious. You're upset. I am serious. She tilted her head, watching as he pulled on his shirt, still smirking like he had the upper hand. Like she was the fool here. Listen, let's talk about this, he continued, stepping toward her. I know this looks bad, but we can work through it. You don't seem to understand, she interrupted. The house? Mine. The company? Mine. Your car? Also mine. Your bank accounts? I control them. The prenup you signed without reading? Ironclad. So no. Daniel, we don't need to talk about anything. His smirk faltered. You're bluffing. Elena smiled. Check the paperwork. The color drained from his face. For the first time, he actually looked nervous. She took a step back, her voice unwavering. You lost me the moment you brought her into my home. Now you've lost everything else too. Enjoy your new life, Daniel. Whatever's left of it. And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving him standing there in stunned silence. For the first time in their marriage, he was the one left behind. Daniel sat in stunned silence long after Elena had walked out. His mind was racing, trying to process what had just happened. This wasn't the reaction he had expected. He had braced himself for tears, screaming, even a slap. But instead, she had walked away with a quiet, terrifying confidence. And that was what unsettled him the most. With a sharp breath, he reached for his phone. His lawyer would sort this out. Whatever Elena thought she had over him, it had to be a mistake. But when he dialed the number, a sinking feeling settled in his gut. Daniel, his lawyer's voice came through, tight with discomfort. I was about to call you. Good, Daniel snapped. Elena's making ridiculous claims. She thinks she owns my house, my company. I need you to fix this. There was a long pause. Then, finally, his lawyer sighed. She's right. Daniel's grip tightened around his phone. What? I told you to review the contract before signing, but you didn't. Legally, almost everything is under her name. The house, the shares in the company. You technically transferred them to her after your wedding. Daniel felt his world tilt. That wasn't possible. This was his company, his wealth, his empire. Elena wouldn't do this to me, he muttered, more to himself than anyone. She loves me. She did, his lawyer said carefully. But I don't think she does anymore. Daniel ended the call without another word, his pulse hammering. He stormed through the house, grabbing his keys, ready to confront her, only to stop short in the driveway. His car was gone. It hit him then. Elena hadn't been bluffing. She had really taken everything. And for the first time in his life, Daniel Sterling knew what it was like to lose. Meanwhile, Elena sat in the back seat of her car, watching the city lights blur past. The man driving, her personal assistant, Jared, glanced at her through the rear-view mirror. Are you okay? He asked hesitantly. Elena exhaled slowly. I'm free. For years, she had lived for Daniel, adjusted her life to his schedule, forgiven what should have been unforgivable. Not anymore. Now it was her turn to live. And Daniel? He could drown in his own regret. Daniel didn't sleep that night. How could he? He had lost everything in the span of a few hours. His house, his company, his wealth, things he had taken for granted, assuming they would always be his. But more than that, he had lost Elena. And for the first time, he realized what that truly meant. At sunrise, he drove to his office, or what used to be his office. The building stood tall and imposing, but as he stepped inside, something felt wrong. The employees whispered when they saw him, exchanging glances as he passed. Something was off. His assistant, Grace, looked up from her desk, her face filled with sympathy. "Mr. Sterling, cancel my meetings for today," he ordered. "I need to sort some things out." Grace hesitated. "Sir, you don't have any meetings today. You don't have access to the executive schedule anymore." Daniel's jaw clenched. "What the hell are you talking about?" A new voice answered. "She's talking about this." Daniel turned sharply to see Ethan Carter, the company's legal advisor, holding a thick envelope. He tossed it onto the desk in front of Daniel. An official notice of transfer. Everything was Elena's. The office, the stocks, the power. Daniel's hands shook as he flipped through the pages. This was his empire, his legacy. And now, he was nothing more than a name on an outdated title. "She gave you 1 week to pack your things," Ethan added. "After that, security will escort you out." Daniel's mind reeled. 1 week? She was actually kicking him out? This wasn't some petty act of revenge. This was war. "She can't do this," he muttered, more to himself than anyone. Ethan gave him a sharp look. "She already has." Daniel sank into his chair, gripping the armrests. Elena had really left him. And this time, she hadn't just walked away. She had burned every bridge behind her. Meanwhile, Elena, she stood in her new office, the same one Daniel had sat in for years. The CEO's office. Her office. She ran her fingers along the polished desk, inhaling deeply. She had spent years building Daniel up, making him a success, only for him to betray her. But now she was in control. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Jared, her assistant, stepped in. "Elena, the board is waiting." She smiled. "Let's not keep them waiting then." With her head held high, she walked forward, toward the future Daniel had never thought she could have without him. But he was wrong, and soon he would realize just how much. Daniel Sterling had been a king, a powerful, respected man who had built an empire. But today, as he stepped out of the office he no longer owned, he was just another nobody. The realization burned through him like acid. The whispers of employees as he walked past. The way the security guards looked at him, not with the respect they once had, but with pity. He clenched his fists. This isn't over. He needed a plan. A way back. His first stop was the bank. Surely his money was still his. But when he logged into his account, his heart stopped. The balance was pathetic. Millions gone. No. He scrolled through the transactions, his breath coming in sharp gasps. The investments, the properties, even the liquid assets, all had been transferred to Elena's name. He slammed his fist against the desk. "Elena," he muttered, hatred and regret twisting in his chest. She had outplayed him. Completely. And the worst part? She never even raised her voice. Meanwhile, Elena had never felt so free. For years, she had been Daniel's perfect wife. The woman who stood beside him, never in front of him. The one who supported his dreams while letting hers fade. Not anymore. She stepped into her new home, a sleek penthouse with a skyline view. The kind of place she had always dreamed of, but never allowed herself to want. Because Daniel had once told her, "We don't need something so extravagant." He was fine living in a mansion, as long as it was his. But this was hers. Jared handed her a glass of wine. "You're smiling," he noted. Elena took a slow sip, gazing out at the city. "I'm finally living for myself." "Any regrets?" he asked. She thought about it. For years, she had loved Daniel, worshipped him, believed in a version of him that never truly existed. She had given him her heart, and in return, he had given it to someone else. So no, she had no regrets. Daniel, on the other hand, he was about to drown in his. Daniel Sterling had always been a man in control. But today, as he sat in his empty apartment, not his mansion, not his penthouse, but a cold, unfamiliar rental, he felt the crushing weight of losing everything. The expensive suits, the high-profile meetings, the luxury cars gone. His phone buzzed, and for the first time in days, hope flickered in his chest. Maybe it was his lawyer, telling him they found a loophole. Maybe it was a business partner offering a way back. But when he saw the name on the screen, his stomach twisted. Madeline, the woman he had risked everything for. His mistress. The woman who had whispered sweet words into his ear, promised him excitement, and made him believe he needed more than what he already had. He hesitated, then answered. Madeline, he started, running a hand through his hair. Daniel, she purred. I've missed you. We haven't talked since your wife left. His chest tightened. Since Elena left. Since she took everything. Since his entire life crumbled. You disappeared, Madeline continued, her tone light, teasing. And I thought, maybe you were just busy rebuilding. But then I heard, you're not rebuilding anything, are you? Daniel's grip on the phone tightened. What are you saying? A soft laugh. I'm saying, Daniel, that I liked you when you were powerful. When you had a mansion, a name worth something. There was no affection in her voice. No sympathy. Only mockery. Madeline. I don't date losers, Daniel, she cut in smoothly. And right now? That's exactly what you are. The call ended before he could reply. Daniel stared at the screen, his hands trembling with rage. She had used him. Just like he had used Elena. And now he was the one left behind. Meanwhile, Elena sat at a high-profile gala, her black silk dress hugging her curves, her presence commanding attention. For years, she had stood quietly beside Daniel at these events, a perfect wife in the background. Now she was the one people wanted to talk to. Investors. CEOs. The kind of people who had once only acknowledged her as Daniel's wife. But Daniel Sterling was nobody now. And she was everything. Jared leaned in, whispering, "He's here." Elena didn't have to ask who he meant. She felt him before she saw him. Daniel stood at the entrance, looking at her with a haunted expression. His expensive suit didn't hide the exhaustion in his eyes, the desperation. He had come to fight for something. Maybe for power. Maybe for redemption. Or maybe for her. But it was too late. Elena picked up her champagne glass, tilted her head slightly, and smiled. Daniel's fist clenched. For the first time, he realized she had truly moved on. Daniel had never known true humiliation until now. Standing at the entrance of the gala, he watched as Elena laughed with powerful men, her presence radiating confidence. She looked untouchable. And for the first time, he wasn't the man by her side. The sight sent a bitter taste down his throat. She used to look at him like that. With admiration, with trust, with love. And now, she barely even noticed him. Taking a deep breath, Daniel squared his shoulders and walked forward, ignoring the whispers that followed his every step. Elena. She finally turned, and that was the moment he knew. She wasn't the same woman he had betrayed. The Elena standing before him wasn't the devoted wife who had once given him her everything. No. This was the woman who had taken it all back. She raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering in her dark eyes. Daniel, to what do I owe the pleasure? Her voice was smooth, unshaken. He clenched his jaw. We need to talk. She swirled her champagne glass, tilting her head. Do we? Daniel's patience snapped. Enough, Elena. His voice was low, desperate. I know I hurt you, but, she echoed, her smile never faltering. But we were more than just one mistake, he pressed. We were us. Us. A word that used to mean something. Elena's expression remained unreadable. You're right, Daniel. We were us. And you threw that away. He exhaled sharply. I made a mistake. No, she interrupted, her voice calm but sharp. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is misplacing an important document. But what you did, Daniel. She leaned in slightly, her scent, once so familiar, taunting him. That was a choice. Daniel felt like the ground had been ripped out from under him. She was right. He had chosen Madeline, chosen excitement, chosen betrayal. And now, he was paying the price. Elena, please, he murmured. I know I messed up, but She sighed, finishing her drink before placing the glass on the tray of a passing waiter. Then she met his gaze, her expression finally shifting to something more honest. You want me to forgive you? She asked softly. For a moment, hope surged in his chest. But then she smiled. A slow, knowing smile. Live with the regret, Daniel. Then she walked away. And for the first time in his life, Daniel Sterling felt powerless. Daniel had never known what it was like to be truly powerless until now. He had watched Elena walk away, her confidence unshaken, her final words ringing in his ears. Live with the regret, Daniel. And that was exactly what he had been doing. Days turned into weeks, and the silence that followed was deafening. Elena didn't call. She didn't reach out. She didn't even look back. At first, Daniel convinced himself it was just pride. She needed time. She would come around. But the longer the silence stretched, the colder reality became. She wasn't coming back. And worst of all, she didn't want to. Meanwhile, Elena's life had never been better. Her calendar was full, meetings, business ventures, high-profile events. She had taken over everything Daniel once had, and now it was thriving under her leadership. Investors admired her. Business partners respected her. And unlike Daniel, she never took any of it for granted. Yet, despite it all, she knew what people whispered behind her back. She's doing all of this for revenge. They thought she wanted to see Daniel crumble. They were wrong. She wanted nothing from him. Not his pain. Not his guilt. Not even his love. She just wanted to move on. And she was doing exactly that. But Daniel? He was drowning. The breaking point. Daniel had spent the last few weeks in denial. Drinking. Sleeping too little. Ignoring the world. He told himself it was temporary. That he could fix this. But every attempt to reach Elena had been met with silence. And then, one night, he saw it. A picture. Elena at a gala, dressed in a sleek black gown, her arm linked with Jared's. They looked close. Comfortable. Happy. The caption under the photo sent a sharp, twisting pain through his chest. A power couple in the making? Daniel's vision blurred with rage. No. Elena was his. Jared was just a friend. A business partner. Not a replacement. Was he? A bitter laugh escaped him. You pushed her away. And now, someone else was stepping into the space he had taken for granted. For the first time since she left, Daniel felt fear. Was he losing her for good? He couldn't let that happen. It was time to do something. Daniel wasn't the kind of man who gave up easily. He had lost everything, his wife, his company, his pride. But there was still one thing left to fight for. Her. And if there was even the smallest chance to get her back, he would take it. Elena was in the middle of a business meeting when her assistant leaned in, whispering cautiously, Mr. Sterling is here. For the first time in months, she hesitated. Daniel hadn't shown up at her office since the divorce. Why now? Taking a steady breath, she nodded. Send him in. Moments later, the door opened, and there he was. Except this wasn't the Daniel Sterling she once knew. Gone was the polished businessman, the arrogant CEO who thought the world belonged to him. This Daniel looked different. His once sharp suit was slightly wrinkled, his tie missing. His usual self-assured posture was tense, as if he wasn't sure if he should even be here. And then there were his eyes. Haunted, like a man who had finally realized the cost of his actions. Elena kept her expression cool. Daniel. He swallowed hard. Elena. She raised a hand, cutting him off. If this is about the company, I'm busy. He let out a sharp breath. It's not about the company. It's about us. Us. That word again. Elena's fingers tightened around her pen, but her face remained unreadable. There is no us, Daniel. His jaw clenched. There can be. A humorless laugh escaped her lips. Is that right? And what exactly made you decide this? Before or after you saw the picture of Jared and me? His muscles tensed at the mention of Jared's name. That's not. Don't lie to me, she said quietly. Not anymore. Daniel exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair.
Fine.
Yes, seeing that picture made me realize something. She arched an eyebrow. And what's that? His voice was raw when he finally spoke. That I can't stand the idea of you moving on with someone else. Elena blinked, momentarily thrown off by his honesty. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, she leaned back in her chair, studying him. You don't get to do this, Daniel. He frowned. Do what? She tilted her head, her voice soft but firm. Decide when you want to care. His breath caught. Because that was the truth, wasn't it? For years, he had taken her love for granted. And now that it was gone, he suddenly wanted it back. Elena, I know I don't deserve another chance, he admitted. But I need you to know. I regret everything. She stared at him for a long moment before shaking her head. I don't care, Daniel. His heart stopped. She stood up, walking to the window, her back to him. Do you know how long I cried over you? How long I begged the universe to give me a reason to stay? He swallowed hard, but she didn't turn around. I broke myself trying to love you, Daniel. And now that I'm finally whole again, you think you can just walk back into my life? Her voice was calm, but the weight of her words crushed him. Elena. She turned to face him, her gaze steady. You don't love me. You just don't like losing. Daniel flinched. She wasn't wrong. For years, he had been in control of everything, his company, his marriage, his life. But now? He had lost the one person who had ever truly loved him. And, the worst part? It was all his fault. Elena sighed, rubbing her temples. I don't hate you, Daniel. But I don't love you either. His chest tightened. Is that really it? He whispered. There's nothing left. She hesitated. And for a moment, just a moment, he thought he saw something flicker in her eyes. But then she smiled. A slow, final smile. No, Daniel, she said softly. There's nothing left. Then she walked past him, leaving him alone in the office. Leaving him with nothing but regret. Daniel stood frozen in Elena's office, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. There's nothing left. Her words echoed in his head, sharp as a blade carving through his soul. She had moved on. Or at least she was trying to. And yet, why did it feel like she was lying? There had been a flicker of hesitation in her eyes, a brief pause before she delivered the final blow. Was she testing him? Or had he really destroyed everything beyond repair? For the first time in his life, Daniel didn't have the answer. But there was one thing he did know. He couldn't let her go. Not yet. Elena walked into her penthouse and shut the door behind her, exhaling slowly. Her hands trembled. She clenched them into fists. She had done it. She had finally looked Daniel in the eyes and told him she didn't love him anymore. So why did she feel like she couldn't breathe? She closed her eyes, pressing a hand to her chest. It wasn't fair. He didn't get to show up now after she had spent months picking up the pieces of her shattered heart. He didn't get to say he regretted it. He didn't get to fight for her when it was too late. Because if she let him back in, she knew what would happen. He would hurt her again. And this time, she wouldn't survive it. Her phone vibrated. She hesitated before checking the screen. Daniel. Her heart clenched, but she forced herself to ignore it. A second later, a message popped up. Daniel. You once told me love isn't about words. It's about actions. I'm going to prove to you that I still love you, Elena. And I don't care how long it takes. Elena stared at the message, her breath catching in her throat. No. She deleted it. She wouldn't fall for his promises again. But deep down, she knew Daniel Sterling had never been the kind of man to give up. And this time, neither was she. Daniel had spent years building his empire, making ruthless decisions, never once considering what it would cost him. Now, for the first time, he was willing to risk it all. He had money, power, influence. None of it mattered anymore. The only thing that did? Winning back the woman he lost. And he had a plan. One that would force Elena to finally see him, not as the man who broke her heart, but as the man willing to do whatever it took to fix it. The question was, would she let him? Daniel Sterling had made mistakes. Unforgivable ones. But he had never been the kind of man to walk away from a fight. And this was the fight of his life. Elena stood in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by laughter and conversation, yet feeling utterly alone. It was a charity gala, one she had organized months ago. One Daniel had no business attending. And yet, when she turned toward the entrance, her breath hitched. There he was, in a crisp black suit, looking just as devastatingly handsome as ever, except there was something different. The arrogance in his stride was gone. The Daniel Sterling who once believed the world was at his feet now looked like a man who had lost everything. And yet, as his eyes locked onto hers across the room, there was no hesitation, only determination. Elena forced herself to turn away. She wasn't going to let him ruin this night. Not again. But then, the lights dimmed. And suddenly, all eyes were on Daniel as he took the stage. Elena's pulse quickened. What the hell was he doing? The guests whispered, intrigued. The man who had once owned half of the city was about to speak, and everyone wanted to hear it. But she didn't. She was already turning to leave when his voice stopped her cold. I never appreciated my wife the way she deserved. The room fell silent. Elena froze. I built an empire, but I never realized that my greatest treasure was the woman who stood beside me, Daniel continued, his voice raw. Until I lost her. Every breath in the room seemed to still. Elena clenched her fists. This wasn't happening. Not here. Not now. She took a step toward the exit, but his next words shattered her resolve. She once told me love isn't about words. It's about actions. So tonight, I have one final action left. Then, in front of everyone, he pulled out a document and tore it in half. Murmurs rippled through the room. Elena's stomach twisted. No. She knew what that was. Daniel had just publicly signed away his entire fortune. His company. His estate. His assets. Everything. Gone. Because of her. Her nails dug into her palms as she forced herself to keep breathing. You once took everything from me, Elena, Daniel said, his voice unwavering. Tonight, I'm giving it all back. Because the truth is, I don't care about any of it. He took a slow step toward her, his gaze never leaving hers. The only thing I want, his voice cracked, is you. Elena's vision blurred. Not because she was touched, but because this was too much. Too late. Too painful. She shook her head, her throat tight. This doesn't change anything, Daniel. He exhaled, a sad smile tugging at his lips. I know. His eyes softened. But at least now you'll know. I never loved the power. I only ever loved you. The weight of his words crushed her. Because for the first time, she believed him. Elena stood outside, the cool night air brushing against her skin. Daniel had walked away after that. He hadn't begged, hadn't pleaded, had simply given her the one thing she had always wanted, the choice. And now, she didn't know what to do with it. The man who had once broken her had just given up everything to prove he loved her. She had spent months telling herself she was over him, that she had moved on. But as she stood there alone, her heart whispered the one question she wasn't ready to face. Did she still love him? Footsteps echoed behind her. She turned. Daniel stood there, hands in his pockets, looking like he was bracing for impact. I won't chase you anymore, Elena, he murmured. I meant what I said. It's your choice now. Silence stretched between them. The past. The pain. The love that refused to die. Then, in the quiet of the night, she whispered the words that would decide their fate. Then stay. Daniel stilled. His eyes searched hers. And this time, when she reached for him, he didn't let go.